Welcome to the Beyond Barriers podcast. If you're an ambitious woman who wants to dominate your career, then you are in the right place. This podcast is co-hosted by Nikki Barua, digital innovator, serial entrepreneur, author, and speaker, and Monica Marquez, ex-Googler, diversity expert, and senior corporate leader. From inspiring stories to cutting-edge strategies, you'll learn how to develop the skill set, mindset, and tool set to get future-ready fast and accelerate your success. Welcome to the Beyond Barriers Habits and Hacks Show. Did you know that 40% of your activities are driven by habits, good or bad? That means you are the product of what you do habitually. That's why it can be a struggle to change even when you hope to exert willpower. Habits are a powerful force that makes change challenging. In today's episode, we'll discuss the daily habits of successful people, because highly successful people don't rise to the top by behaving like everyone else. So we'll share with you how you can develop new habits that make success effortless. So let's dive right in. Nikki, tell us, what are some of the most common habits of high achievers?
That's a great question. Well, first of all, successful people, high achievers, they all know what habits really work for them. And they are absolutely ruthless in habit orientation because they know it's exactly what makes them successful. So they're very focused on not only understanding the right habits, but establishing them and ensuring that that becomes part of their daily routine over and over again. So if you admire someone, you look up to someone that you is your hero. If you want the same outcomes as them, don't focus on what they have. Focus on what they do.
Right.
And focus on what they do consistently. Because if you adopt their habits, you will have a greater chance of success.
Okay.
So let's talk about what are some of those most common habits that most high achievers have.
Yes, tell us.
Okay, so here are 5 that I will share. Number 1, they all have a morning routine that's very empowering, that grounds them and fuels them. So they might have different routines, but they all have one that is very, very consistent. And it's something that is very thoughtfully created. And I'll share mine a little later as well. Second, they focus on the most important thing that they must achieve. So whether it is long-term, having a clear focus on the long-term vision, or whether it is being clear about their plan and their priorities, or even down to the day level, focusing on what is the most important thing. So they have this habit of really zeroing in on the most important thing and eliminating all distraction.
Okay.
And so then, oftentimes we find ourselves kind of getting distracted by all the things coming at us,
right.
The long task list and all of the various demands on our time and attention. Well, very successful people have trained themselves and developed the habit of constantly going back to that one clear focus. And even if the original plan is blown away, they go back to planning and prioritizing and figuring out the most important use of their time, their energy, and their focus. Number 3, they're all relationship builders that are constantly growing their community of influence, constantly growing their networks, and really thinking about those relationships from a place of contribution, to think about how can they create more value? How can they serve more people? How can they serve at a higher level? And because of that, they're constant relationship builders, not just from a perspective of who they can serve, but who can help them achieve that outcome. Number 4, they're relentlessly focused on self-development every single day.
Yes.
Whether it's learning a new skill or gaining some new insight, it's surrounding themselves with next level peers, or it's seeking mentors, constantly learning new things, focusing on their self-development, gaining self-awareness about themselves, and then really focusing on reflection. It's very easy to constantly consume content, consume new information. But if that information is consumed without the time to think about it, to reflect on it, and have some kind of takeaway, it doesn't sit as deeply. So constant self-development really requires you to make not only learning, but reflection and integration part of your process. So that's something that is a habit that most successful people have.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, number 5, self-discipline and accountability, which is really focusing on doing what's right instead of doing what's easy. The self-discipline to say, I'm going to do the right thing even when I don't feel like it. And then once you have that execution, to hold yourself fully accountable, no matter what the result might be. There is no blame game. There is no victim mindset. It's very much, I'm fully accountable for the results I have. And therefore, I can only get the results if I exercise self-discipline. If I do what I said I will do, when I said I would do it, no matter what. So those are really the 5 biggest ones. Number 1, the morning routine, that is grounding and empowering. Number 2, constantly focusing on the most important thing. Number 3, building relationships where you can create and contribute value. Number 4, constant self-development. And number 5, self-discipline and accountability for all outcomes.
Those are also, tangible, and those are, just really critical. And I realize number 2 is the one I need to work on. I don't think I really focus on the most important thing on a daily basis. I'll have a task list and I will focus on those easy things, but then realize they're not really getting me ahead where I need to get ahead. So
it's interesting that you bring that up, because that is what we often tend to do, is we create a task list and we're focusing on completion, which is how can I complete more things of this task list quickly. So we, of course, start with the easy ones because they're easy to check off that list.
Right.
But when we focus on easy, it may not be the most important thing. It may not be the most valuable contribution you can make. So it's really important to start with and finish the most important thing you must get done.
So that's the one I'm going to focus on. Now, one of my other habits that I feel has guided me and really has empowered me is every day, make sure I make it a point that I read industry-related content every morning and note any memorable stat or any key takeaway that I found resonated with me. It kind of just fuels me and kind of fuels that creativity and gets me in that zone. So that's something that I do that really does empower me every morning.
So what you just described is the idea of learning, but also thinking and integrating that back. So you're not just reading a whole bunch of industry information and stats. You're thinking about, well, what does that really mean?
Yes.
How does that shape my thinking? How could I leverage this to move the needle and so forth?
Yes,
and that
exactly.
Learning and thinking is the key. My morning routine is my personal habit that grounds me the most. And in fact, I turn it into a mnemonic so that it's easy to remember and it's easy to follow, especially when I was first trying to create this habit. It was a little bit hard to remember to do all of that. And so I realized that creating a mnemonic would help me. And I just call it my magic morning routine. And it's M for meditation, A for activation or exercise, or just moving physically. G is for gratitude. I is for inspiration. And C is for commitment. What is the commitment I'm making for the most important thing I'll focus on that day? So that routine of being able to wake up and begin my day with meditation in a calm, composed way, as opposed to the feeling frazzled and looking at email and feeling overwhelmed. Starting with meditation followed by activation, whether it's stretching or walking, and then gratitude or prayer, and followed by inspiration to read or listen to something. And I keep it very short. It could be 5 or 10 minutes of something inspirational, just to start on a positive note, something uplifting. And finally, wrap up that morning routine with one clear commitment and, making that determination of how I will achieve that.
Do you want to grow your impact as a change agent who ignites transformation in others, but you don't have a proven step-by-step method? Do you want to grow your visibility and influence as a thought leader to inspire others, but you don't know where to begin? The Beyond Barriers High Performance Executive Coach Certification is designed for experienced leaders who want to grow their impact and influence. Join this exclusive community of high achievers, advance your career as a leader, and experience the joy of helping others grow. Go to IamBeyondBarriers.com and register for the webinar to learn more. I love that. I love magic. I love the acronym you came up with. I think it's fabulous in terms of remembering what it is that you want to do, and it'll make it a lot easier. So it sounds super amazing, but how does someone develop new habits? I mean, because it's easier said than done. I know that I heard your magic and I'm like, I want to sprinkle some magic in my mornings. But, and I can see how I would start off with enthusiasm, but then maybe lose steam along the way. Like, how do I sustain it? How do I make it long term?
Yeah, sticking to habits or building new habits definitely is a challenge that we all face. There's an amazing quote by the author Brian Tracy who says, "Good habits are hard to form, but easy to live with. Bad habits are easy to form, but hard to live with." And it really sums up the challenge that we face, which is why it's so hard to build good habits, because it's not just about forming good habits. It's because we can't just get rid of bad habits. What you really do is you replace bad habits with good ones.
Okay.
Because if you want to establish good habits, you have to create room for it. And you can create room for something that if there's something else that's not as good already taking its place. I'll give you a simple example. Like if you want to, perhaps like start a different morning routine. You said you want to do the magic routine.
Yes.
Well, that sounds great to talk about establishing that morning routine. But the question is, what do you do today? How does your morning begin today? Because that too is a habit. So if you wake up and do something naturally, maybe you wake up, roll over and grab your phone and immediately check email and check Twitter or Facebook and get lost in reading the news, or looking at your task list and start worrying about the task list. All of those are habits. And you can't establish a magic morning routine unless you replace the current bad habit with a new one. And that's what gets really hard to do.
That makes total sense. So yes, I do exactly that. I'll roll out of bed and immediately start, pick up my phone, looking at emails, looking at things that I need to start doing. And I don't leave room for magic. Well, what are the next steps? I mean, like you said, you can't really just, what are the steps in terms of really doing that? So it's hard to make change. I want to implement magic. What is it that I need to do? What are the steps?
Yeah. So this is what you can do to replace bad habits with good ones. First off, you need to have a powerful reason for change. If you don't have a big enough why, then even if you start with all the enthusiasm in the world, you're not going to stay the course when things get hard. And that's where, willpower is just never going to drive the change.
Yes.
You need a powerful reason first. So before you start thinking about what cool habit or what good habit would be super cool to implement, don't worry about the habit or the activity or even the outcome. Focus on, why does it even matter to you? Get really clear about the reason and make it a powerful reason. A general reason isn't good enough. It has to be so meaningful to you that change becomes necessary. And then you're likely to take the action to make success inevitable.
Right. Okay.
Then number 2, you need to get leverage on yourself. And the way you get leverage is by associating pain with a bad habit and associating pleasure or joy with a good habit. Because what that does is gives you guardrails. On one side is the pain of sticking to your bad habit. On the other side is the pleasure of, replacing it with a good habit. And when we shift our beliefs about, the existing habit versus the new habit, that's when change becomes a lot easier. So that's how you get leverage on yourself.
Right. Okay.
So you start with that why, and then you think about, well, why is sticking to this habit. So maybe it is not exercising is a bad habit, or, just watching TV for too many hours and what have you. And you want to replace that with watching TV with reading books. Well, you have to, first of all, have a really big reason and then think about, well, what is it doing? In what ways is it harming you to watch TV? And in what ways would you gain pleasure out of reading a book? And if the reasons aren't big enough, that changes won't happen.
Right. Okay.
Number 3, start small and set yourself up for success. So let's say you wake up at 8 a.m. today. And you decide you want a good habit of waking up at 5 a.m. You are not going to make that leap of 3 hours difference overnight. It's just not going to happen. So start small. Start by waking up just 5 to 10 minutes earlier. So instead of 8 a.m., maybe wake up at 7:50 or 7:55 a.m., just 5 minutes. And once that becomes effortless, make it an additional 5-10 minutes, make it an additional 5-10 minutes. So make it incremental in terms of the change and get used to that change before you push yourself further. And when you make the change really small, you set yourself up for success, but you also give yourself time for that to become the norm.
That makes sense.
Number 4, habits are all about repetition. And repetition doesn't happen unless you create space for it and allocate time to it. This is where your calendar can be very handy. So any habit that you want to form, whether it is exercise, whether it's waking up at a certain time, or you want to do a magic morning routine, or maybe it's reading every day, make time for it on your calendar, make it a recurring invite, and then stick to your calendar. Because once you schedule it, you are setting yourself up to execute. But if you never schedule it, something even as simple as thinking, if you want to think, put it on your calendar. Because if you don't have it on your calendar, when do you think you'll actually think?
Yeah.
You have no time for it.
Right.
Everything we do is an allocation of time against outcomes. So if you want a certain outcome, you must invest time and allocate time towards it.
That makes total sense.
And finally, number 5, reward yourself for positive change. Celebrating is all your progress, any progress, maybe even, making that first step and deciding, celebrate that. Because once you give yourself positive reinforcement, you're much more likely to enjoy that process, stick to it, and keep repeating it until that habit becomes your norm. So that's what all of that is. That's how you replace bad habits or no good habits with really good habits. If you want the change, follow these 5 steps. Give yourself a big enough why, get leverage through pain associated with the bad habit and pleasure with a good habit. Start small, set yourself up for success. Schedule time on your calendar so that the habits are repeated, and reward yourself for progress.
That's fantastic. So there you have it, folks. Think about what's the one habit that would radically change your life, and just focus on that and follow the steps and begin your transformation. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time. Thank you for listening to the Beyond Barriers podcast. There are thousands of podcasts out there, and we are so grateful that you've chosen to listen to ours. If you enjoyed the show, please tell a friend about it and subscribe to get new episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Visit IamBeyondBarriers.com, where you'll find show notes and links to all resources for each show, including the best way to connect with our guests. See you next episode.